Vera had been working in the surgical department of the first clinical hospital for many years and had long gotten used to the increased workload and irregular work hours. Some people said surgery wasn't a woman's job, but it was hard to convince this talented female doctor. Her best friend from school, Alina, would just shake her head. Where does that even come from? I can't even imagine doing that kind of work. It makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it. Vera smiled. Well, what did you expect? Surgery isn't for everyone, though. Every specialty in medicine is important in its own way. I would even say priceless. Alina looked at her friend with respect and smiled. That was Vera all over. Loyalty to the cause and working for the common good. From an early age, she was interested in medicine, and this was partly encouraged by her communication with her grandmother Zina, who was considered the best healer in the area. Despite having no formal medical education, Zinaida Semenivna's services were in high demand. The kind grandmother knew a lot about herbs and could talk for hours about the healing properties of different plants. Vera loved hearing her grandmother's stories, and she would ask her to repeat them just like bedtime fairy tales. By the time she graduated from school, Vera was certain she would go into medicine, choosing surgery as her specialty. Studying came easily to her. That's what happens when someone makes the right choice in life, and circumstances seem to align to support them. She met her future husband, Vitya, during her internship. No, he wasn't connected to medicine at all. Victor had come to the hospital with an appendicitis attack. It just so happened that Vera participated in the surgery. Not as the lead surgeon, of course, but she assisted the experienced doctor quite competently. The operation was a success. The next day, Vera visited the patient to check on his health. From that day, the young people started talking. At first, it was just conversations in the ward. Then after his discharge, they went to the movies, cafes, and took walks in the parks. Time passed, and the young couple grew closer and closer. To everyone, their union seemed perfect. Vera thought so too, but after the wedding, everything turned out not as rosy as their friends and acquaintances had imagined. Victor's element had always been business. It seemed he could make money out of thin air, which, in Vera's eyes, was pure magic. Unfortunately, the business took more and more of his energy, leaving him little time for his beloved wife. Endless business negotiations, long business trips, and phone calls at all hours of the day and night did not help their relationship. Despite this, Vera loved her husband and believed that one day things would change. But time passed, and nothing changed. Then Victor died in a tragic accident on the river. On that fateful day, he and his business partner decided to go out of town to discuss something important in an informal setting. Usually, this method worked like a charm, but that day everything went wrong. A strong wind suddenly kicked up, creating huge waves, and the boat capsized. Although Victor was considered a good swimmer, he couldn't save himself. His future business partner survived, grabbing onto the overturned boat. Victor's body was found several kilometers downstream. It was covered with abrasions caused by being thrown against the rocky riverbed. At the time, Vera was performing an important operation, and the hospital management, wanting to protect her from the shock, informed her of her husband's death only at the end of the workday. At that moment, Vera felt like the world had collapsed. She had always lived with the thought that one day they would have a child and live happily. Now all those dreams had vanished. The funeral and all the subsequent arrangements seemed like a dream to Vera. It's hard to imagine what she went through before she could emerge from the depths of depression and sorrow. 3 years passed. During this time, Vera managed to recover a bit and come to terms with the fact that she was a widow at 33. She didn't want to start a new life with anyone. Now, when her feelings had dulled a bit and weren't as sharp as before, she only sought one thing: to find inner balance and peace. Moreover, no one who showed interest in her even came close to being like Victor and couldn't measure up to him in any way. But you can't live alone forever. You're still young, and you'll spend your whole life within these hospital walls, Alina would say. But Vera always had a response ready for that. It's okay, I'll catch up. Before, she had put family first, then work. Now, she decided to reverse that order. Every year, especially after winter, Vera would visit her husband's grave. She would refresh the soil, pull weeds, and add some sand around the perimeter of the grave. When necessary, she would paint the fence or wipe off the dust. But that spring, she couldn't find time to personally clean the grave. As luck would have it, she was sent to a medical symposium at the other end of the country. Vera couldn't leave her husband's grave unkempt. Upon arriving at the cemetery, she decided to speak to the caretaker. I'll pay, And you can do it? But when Vera looked into the eyes of the 80-year-old man, she immediately realized that, in this case, money wouldn't help her. To her great surprise, the caretaker still agreed to help. However, not with his actions, but with his words. He recommended a good man who cleaned graves for money. His name was Serioza Maitan. A good guy. I've known him for a long time. A wanderer, but he doesn't drink. And overall, he's quite responsible. Well, all right, give me his contact info. I'll definitely pay him. Vera was happy to take this opportunity. Deep down, she felt ashamed that she wouldn't be able to pay attention to her husband's grave. But on the other hand, life went on, and she couldn't tie herself down to obligations right now. She found the recommended helper right there. He was at the cemetery, tidying up the fence of one of the graves. Hello, I need the plot cleaned up. Add some soil, maybe from the ravine nearby, and make the edging out of sand, and update the fence. Vera started. Sergei turned out to be a pleasant-looking man about 35 years old, with kind gray eyes and a slight touch of gray at his temples. After listening carefully, he said, "Sure, I'll do it. Just point out the spot, and I'll take care of it soon." Vera was surprised by his words, almost impressed. The thing was, Sergei didn't mention anything about payment. People in such work usually start by talking about money, but he promised to do everything without mentioning the fee. "How much do I owe you?" Vera cautiously asked. Sergei looked at her and smiled slightly. "Oh, whatever you feel like. You know, sometimes an elderly lady comes by. Her pension is tiny. How could I take anything from her? Life is unpredictable. I don't know your situation, but happiness isn't in money." Vera thought about this. She then reached into her pocket and pulled out her wallet. When she opened it, she saw only 2 bills, a 1,000 ruble and a 500 ruble note. Carefully taking the 1,000, she handed it to Sergei, but he shook his head resolutely. No, that's too much. Sorry, I can't take it. Better if you don't give me anything." Vera immediately handed him the 500. She felt it was too little, and she was ashamed. To her surprise, Sergei accepted the payment positively and thanked her warmly. "Don't worry, I'll do everything at the highest level. You can check it later, and if anything's wrong, I'll fix it. I'm always nearby." Vera smiled and, wishing him a good day, headed for the exit. Now, she was sure that her husband's grave would be taken care of on time, and she knew that next fall and the following year, she would do everything herself. The 3 days at the medical forum passed quickly and were full of new information. It was as if the moment. Vera had even forgotten about her agreement with the homeless man who promised to tidy up her husband's grave. Only on the way back home by train did she remember Sergei. "Oh, I should check the work. He seems like a decent man, but you never know," Vera thought as she got off at the station. Since the trip had taken a lot of energy, Vera could only go to the cemetery the next day, confident that Sergei had fulfilled his promise and taken care of the grave. But as soon as she approached the grave, she barely held back a surprised exclamation. Victor's grave was just as it had been before she met the homeless man. It couldn't have been a mistake. What was this? Nothing had been cleaned, the ground wasn't refilled, and the fence wasn't repaired. "What's going on?" I asked nicely, even paid him in advance. Did he deceive me? Vera thought, tears in her eyes. Determined to settle this once and for all, she went to see the caretaker. Yevhen Petrovic, an elderly man, was very good at reading people. When he saw the distressed woman at the door, he understood everything without words. "The worker you recommended took the money, but he disappeared." Yevhen Petrovic shook his head. "I know. Sergei's gone. He's been missing for 3 days. That's not like him. He doesn't even drink." Vera paused. His story made her doubt. She had thought the homeless man had tricked her, but now maybe something else had happened. What if something had happened to him? Or maybe he was ill, and had accused him without proof. Vera began to blame herself. She realized that the 500 rubles weren't worth condemning someone as a liar. It was probably about something else. Sergei had promised to help, then disappeared. That day, she cleaned the grave herself, taking the necessary tools from the cemetery caretaker. "Now it's much better, right?" she said, looking at her husband's photo. Honestly, Vera no longer felt sorry for the money she had given Sergei for the cleaning. It was a small amount. Let him be helped, she thought. Heading to the bus stop, while waiting for the transport, she overheard a strange conversation between 2 old women. "Sergei's a real hero. He saved the girl at the last moment," said one. "He saved her, but didn't protect himself. He got hit by a car," the other replied. "And why did that girl run out on the road? I thought Sergei was dead." "But no," The doctor said he's alive, only in a coma, the second woman added. Vera listened attentively. The women continued chatting about how even homeless people could show kindness and compassion. Still unsure, Vera took out her phone and called a friend who worked in the ICU. The news shocked her. 2 days ago, a man named Sergei Mitin had been hit by a truck while saving a girl who ran into traffic. His condition was still critical, and he was in a coma. Vera could barely hold back her tears. Just moments ago, she had thought Sergei was a fraud who took her money for nothing. Now, the young homeless man seemed like a true hero. Vera rushed to the hospital as if on wings. After talking to the doctor, she went into the ward and saw Sergei, covered in wires and tubes. The doctor said he might wake up tomorrow, but it was also possible he could remain in a coma for years. It depends on his body. His health is normal, but we'll see, the doctor said. Vera found it hard not to cry. She had never felt so much pity for a man before. Even her husband's death had not stirred such emotions in her. From then on, she visited Sergei nearly every day. At first, the doctors and nurses were surprised to see her visiting the homeless man, but eventually, they got used to it and even saw it as a good sign. Vera was considered lucky, a good fairy who could heal anyone. She didn't believe in this, considering it a coincidence, but those who worked with her knew there was something special about her. Perhaps she had inherited it from her grandmother, or maybe it had developed while working in the medical field. One day, Vera wanted to learn more about the girl Sergei had saved. She found out that Lena Petrova was an orphan who had run away from the children's home with some boys, promising to buy her candy. Of course, she never got the candy, but she nearly got hit by a truck. Her parents had died in a car crash, and fate had saved her. When Vera met the girl, she couldn't hold back her tears. Only now did she understand why Sergei had thrown himself under the wheels. Lena looked like a little angel, with blonde hair and large eyes that were impossible not to notice. Why are you asking about her? The director of the orphanage asked cautiously. The question confused Vera. Honestly, she had never thought about adopting a child, but the idea of becoming a mother made her heart beat faster. After learning what was needed for the adoption process, Vera decided to gather the documents. She didn't stop visiting Sergei in the hospital, even though the staff thought it was a futile endeavor. The young homeless man was still in a coma, hovering between life and death. It took Vera a month to gather all the necessary documents. When she went to pick up Lena, it was the best day of her life. When the girl saw her new mom, she immediately ran to hug her. Vera cried, holding the small, trembling body. They walked home, holding hands, and Vera told her funny stories. The girl laughed and kept asking, "Mom, will we always be together now? You won't send me back, right?" "Of course, I won't send you back, my dear," Vera replied with a smile. The next morning, Vera was woken up by a call from the ICU doctor. "Well, Verin, dance. Your homeless man woke up." "Yes, his condition is stable. He's feeling fine, but he keeps asking about that girl, Lena." Vera's heart raced. After preparing breakfast for her daughter, she patiently waited for her to eat. Then, they went together to the hospital. When Vera entered the ward, Sergei couldn't believe his eyes. Everything seemed unreal. "Thank you, Uncle, for saving me," Lena said with a smile. Sergei's lips trembled, and tears filled his eyes. That was probably the best reward for risking his life to save the little angel. And Sergei also apologized.